Hey everybody, stick around because in this video we are cooking up a storm. Thanks for clicking on this video. Once again, we find ourselves faced with the harsh truth that we are not always safe at home. Witnessing the destruction that's recently happened in Florida as a result of the hurricane, we can see once again that sometimes we're faced with the need to fend for ourselves. A lot of natural disasters result in a loss of power. And during a loss of power, it can be very difficult to cook. So once again, we're going to talk about an alternative way of preparing food for your family so that you can have good food, but you can also prepare it without the need for power in your home or for heating up the charcoal grill or encountering any other number of inconveniences. So today we're going to test out Seth McGinn's CanCooker. You may have seen some videos about these things. This is a really cool device that allows you to cook with a limited amount of pressure so that you can cook on lower temperatures, and you can kind of use it like a slow cooker, the set it and forget it kind of cooking style. The CanCooker can be used on just about any cooking surface. You can use it on a stove, you can use it on coal, you can use it over pretty much anything that'll provide a heat source. Not a great idea to use it over open flame on a fire because it is made out of aluminum. Fire could burn through the shell over time, but there are a lot of alternatives on how to use this thing. We're going to explore something really cool to go with that. Today we're going to cook dinner with this and a $6 Sterno folding stove. Let's set this thing up and see exactly what we're dealing with. So I remember these things from back when I was a Boy Scout. These are super useful little stoves that are very simple. They're easy to set up, easy to break down. They break down pretty flat. So just like that, we've got our stove and we're ready to go. All we need now is a can of Sterno to put inside and use as our heat source. Typically, Sterno is not a great heat source for cooking. It's great for warming things up, it's great for boiling water, but if you're cooking things like chicken, it can be difficult to achieve temperatures with Sterno that make it safe to eat without overcooking and drying it out. We're going to try this with the CanCooker and see can we cook some good and tasty chicken using Sterno. So unboxing the CanCooker, we get a cookbook. They also have a YouTube channel that's got a bunch of recipe ideas and things like that on it if you want to go check that out. It comes with a carrying bag that you can store it in, and of course the CanCooker itself. This is the 1.5 gallon CanCooker. There's one that's larger and one that's smaller as well, but this is the 1.5 gallon. So the way this thing works is you put your food inside of it. The lid has a nice, I'm guessing this is probably silicone seal around the edge so that you get a good tight seal. When you put it on and you snap these latches in place. On top, you can see a small hole right here. That's where the limited amount of venting happens so that it doesn't overpressurize. Instead of putting a regulator or something like that on it, which would make it more expensive and difficult to deal with, they simply have a small hole for venting. Looking inside the cooker, you can see it has a non-stick cooking surface and it has a lot of volume in there. You can put a lot of food in this thing. So right now what I want to do is get this thing started so that we can see if we're able to cook a really good chicken dish that's not overdone or dangerously underdone. We're going to start this off and we get this Sterno going. I love stuff like this stove right here. This reminds me a lot of when I was a kid because when it came to camping gear and camp stoves, this was one of the only things out there outside of the military style Coleman camping stove. This was what everybody used. Every Boy Scout, every camper had one of these things in their arsenal. But for the most part, what we were doing with it was heating up cans of soup. We didn't try to cook gourmet meals with it. So let's get the Sterno in there. Let's get it lit. Now, even though this is a non-stick surface, and I'm going to put some cooking spray in there just to kind of make sure everything works the way it's supposed to. It is recommended that you do this. And I'm going to spray it all the way around the edges so that nothing gets stuck high up. So let's set it on here and let this start preheating. So while this is heating up, I'll tell you about a couple things you can do to help out the channel. Of course, as always, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you can be made aware of all upcoming videos. Also, if you really want to help the channel out, go down in the description box, check out our Amazon wish list. It's just a handful of items of all different price point that, if you feel so inclined, you can send directly to me, and I can use that for the channel. So now that this is getting heated up, I'm going to drop some chicken thighs down in here so we can get these things browned up a little bit. This is not a necessary step with this, but as I'll explain in just a minute, it's a good idea to get just a little bit of charring on whatever meat you put in here to add just a little bit of richness of flavor. You're not going to get a heavy char because we are working with lower temperatures, and as said before, I don't want to dry this out just trying to get the chicken cooked properly. Going back to what I mentioned before, the reason why you want to do this is that in order to cook with this pot, you have to use liquid to achieve the steam that's needed to cook. And by doing that, you're creating a little bit more of a boiling process than you are a roasting process, which sometimes can make things look a little bland and taste a little bland. So if you get a chance to brown everything up a little bit before you add your liquids in there, that's fine. As a result of using a lot of liquid, what you're going to end up with is a lot of times the base that the meat is cooking in is going to be a little thinner than it might be if you were making something like this at home, but that's kind of the give and take that goes along with something like this. I'm going to add a little bit of seasoning. I pre-made some salt, pepper, onion powder, and some smoked paprika that I'm going to season this meat with. So let's take a look in this pot. You can kind of see a little bit of the browning process there. I can definitely tell that we're cooking at a much lower temperature than you would normally prefer for cooking something like this as a result of using the sterno. There's just not a lot of sizzle going on, so it takes a little while to get this browned up the way you might want it. I think we're at a step now where we're going to add the rest of our ingredients in, get this thing capped off, and let it start doing its thing. So in order to provide the liquid that we need for cooking, I'm going to throw in some chicken stock. You want to use quite a bit because it is going to cook out to some degree, because of the fact that it's using the pressurized steam as a way of cooking. But I also don't want to use so much that it just becomes too soupy. We're going to add some Kikkoman soy sauce. And what we're making here is going to be a garlic honey spicy chicken. I'm going to add in some garlic. I want to use a lot of that. That garlic flavor really needs to come out. I'm going to add in a little bit of hot honey. You don't have to use hot honey, you can use regular honey, but this will add just that little bit of extra kick. If you're not familiar with hot honey, this is honey that's infused with cayenne pepper. Then I'm going to add some regular honey in as well. The honey will add a sweetness to the flavor, but it will also help to thicken up that liquid that's in there a little bit. I'm going to throw in a little bit of sesame oil. Then I'm going to add some red chili pepper flake. This is going to give it that extra kick. And then just to add a little bit of extra substance, I'm going to throw in some chopped carrots. Now we're going to get our lid on, bolt this thing down, and then we're going to let it cook. Let's let this pot do its thing. We're going to come back in a little while and see what we've got. So checking on the cooking process, I did observe one issue with this product that I really think the company needs to address, and that is this. This entire cooker just radiates the heat of whatever you're cooking on. There is not a surface on here that I can safely touch barehanded now that it's been cooking for a little while. Anytime I handle this from this point forward, I'm going to have pot holders or gloves or something like that. What I'd like to see the CanCooker company do is add some silicone grips to these metal surfaces that are intended for you to touch while it's cooking, such as the handles, the top handle, and these latches on the side. Every one of these needs to be tipped with silicone so that they can be safely touched during the process of cooking. It'd be very easy while cooking to accidentally grab hold of one of these surfaces and severely burn your hand. Seth McGinn, how about hooking a guy up with that? One issue that I see with cooking on this sterno stove is this is a very lightweight stove. While the weight of the cooker itself and the food inside is not an issue, it does take a little bit of effort to latch these things closed. So it would be very easy to put too much pressure on it and possibly crush down that stove or throw it off in the process of trying to re-snap these things. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to check on my cooking. Ooh, wow. It smells lovely, and it is cooking away in there. So I'm going to stir this just a little bit, and we're going to seal it back up and let that pressure build again. Now you don't have to open it up and stir it. This thing will cook on its own. I'm just kind of checking on the cooking process. This is new to me, so let's leave this for a little while longer and come back to it. So we're coming to the end of the cooking process, and I wanted to do something to kind of soak up some of the water that's in the bottom of this. And you saw me throw in the carrots, so normally with something like this, you think potatoes. So that came to mind, and then I realized I had a pack of these Hungry Jack instant hash browns. I picked these up at Dollar Tree. I thought this would be a really cool addition to my camp foods, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the top off. I'm going to dump the contents of this in there, let them absorb some of the liquid that's in there, and also add to the substance of what I'm going to have in the pot. Let's get this sucker open add these in so we can finish this up and have dinner. So if you had one of these, what would be the first thing you'd want to cook in it? Leave me a comment down below and tell me about it. It smells lovely. See how these carrots are cooking up. That's good. Got a little bit of crunch to them, but they're still pretty soft. All right, so let's add these potatoes in there and let's finish this. We're just going to add the whole carton. And typically the way these would be made is that you would add boiling water into the carton here and then let them reconstitute, and then you take them and you fry them up as a hash brown for breakfast. But I think throwing these shreds in here and letting them soak up some of the liquid so everything thickens up a little bit. We have potatoes to go with our carrots and our chicken. All right, let's get the lid back on, let this thing finish. Probably wondering by now, we've been going for about 35 or 40 minutes. No, this is not a quick recipe. This is not something you can throw together last minute. The idea behind this is that you kind of go an hour or so before dinner, throw everything in the pot, close it up, and just kind of let it cook in the background while you're off doing other stuff. All right, I think it's finally time to finish this off. It smells amazing, and I can't wait to dig in and see how this turned out. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this off for a second, and we are going to put out our flame. Put this back up here, open it up. Looks like our potatoes did a great job of soaking up all that extra liquid. As I said earlier, the amount of liquid that you have to use to make this cook properly can leave a very liquidy base in here that's hard to use for anything else. So throwing something in there in the last few minutes of cooking that will absorb that up is definitely a big plus. Keep some of this out and see what we've got. A little bit of everything in that spoonful. Definitely want a lot of these potatoes and carrots. Bring this around here and get a good look at it. It's not the prettiest meal you're ever going to see, but let's see how it tastes. I'm going to start with a bite of these potatoes. Oh yeah, the potatoes soaked up all of the flavor of the liquid. A lot of the heat. Yeah, that was the right thing to do. Throwing those potatoes in there like that really helped. Now we did cook this for pretty close to an hour altogether. Carrots are just right. The true test, how does this chicken turn out? All right, here we go. That is so good. The chicken is perfectly tender. It's completely cooked. The flavor is there all the way through it. The pressure cooking really gets that flavor deep down into the meat. Potatoes and carrots turned out perfect. This is a smashing success. I am very happy with this. Everything from the cooker itself to the use of the sterno stove and being able to cook something this good on a heat source that's intended just for heating things up. I think that turned out amazing. This was definitely worth the effort. I can't say this is a perfect cooking source because of the issue with the heat transfer through all of the metal surfaces, but this is a great alternative, and as long as you keep your head about you and remember that you don't need to grab a hold of any of these surfaces while this thing is still hot, then you'll be fine. Otherwise, this thing is great. Now understand too, this is not just an emergency cooking system. This is designed for everyday cooking. You can cook on your stovetop any night of the week. You can throw your ingredients in there and have the same advantage of just being able to set it and forget it. As they say, let this meal cook in the background while you're handling everything else that you got to handle when you get home from work. You could probably even go so far as to put all the ingredients in, set it in the fridge, and then just when you get home, take it out, put it on the stove, turn it on, and be ready to go. I may try that sometime, and if I do, I'll share that with you. But I'm going to wrap this video up and finish my dinner, and until the next one, prepare for the world that you live in, not the one you wish existed. We'll see you next time.